The morning sun hadn't yet broken through the mountain mist when Clara Bess heard the soft thud of hooves outside her cabin. At first, she thought it might be a stray mule or a neighbor's horse wandering off the ridge. But then came the metallic, clink steady and hollow dragging behind the hooves, like something being pulled across dirt and stone. She stepped out into the chill air, shotgun in hand, nightgown tucked hastily into her boots. Her cabin sat alone in the far western end of Cora's Hollow, a good 3 miles from the nearest ranch. It wasn't the sort of place where uninvited company showed up, especially not at dawn. The horse was chestnut brown, tall and lathered in sweat. It stood still, as if waiting. A rope had been tied around the saddle horn and dragged something behind it. Clara followed the line of the rope with her eyes. A shovel. Not just any shovel, it was her own. The iron spade she kept by the woodpile, but it had been taken. When she saw it yesterday, it had been clean. Now it was streaked with fresh, wet earth. Then came the sound of boots behind her. She turned sharply, but the man standing at the edge of her yard didn't raise his hands, didn't speak at first. He was tall, gaunt, and covered in dust like he'd walked all night across dry plains. His hat shaded his face, but when he stepped forward, she recognized him instantly. Rhett Calder, the rancher from Bitter Hollow. A father, a man whose daughter, Emily, had died just 2 days ago. Clara had been there. She'd sat beside the girl's bed for hours, wiping sweat from the child's brow as fever consumed her. She had closed the girl's eyes herself. "Rhett?" she asked, the name catching in her throat. "What are you doing here?" He didn't answer at first. He walked past the horse and stood in front of the shovel. The air between them hung still, thick with something Clara couldn't name. "You remember this shovel?" he asked quietly. Clara gave a slow nod. "It's mine." He lifted his head then, and Clara saw eyes that didn't blink. Bloodshot, ringed with fury and exhaustion. "It was beside my daughter's grave this morning," he said. Clara's hands went numb. "What do you mean?" "I dug it up," he said flatly. "I had to know. I kept seeing her face, hearing her voice, last night. I swear to God I heard her call for me." She stepped closer. "You dug up the grave?" He nodded once. "But she wasn't there." A rush of air left Clara's lungs. "That's not possible. I was there when we laid her down." "I saw you buried her alive," he growled, voice hoarse and breaking. "Or someone took her. Either way, I'm not leaving until I know the truth." Clara's mind raced. She remembered everything clearly: how the child had gone still, how her breath had vanished, how the doctor had confirmed it. There had been no pulse, no life left in that fragile little body, but still, there had been something off. The doctor had been quick, almost too quick. The casket had been closed sooner than Clara expected. And the undertaker, a man she'd known for years, hadn't looked her in the eyes afterward. Clara looked back at the horse. Its flanks trembled with exhaustion. This animal had been ridden hard, fast, and far. The rope now coiled slack, the shovel half buried in the dirt near her boots. "You think I made a mistake?" she asked softly, unsure whether she was angry or afraid. "I think," Rhett said, "you were the last person to see her. And if she was still breathing, you'd know better than anyone." His words weren't shouted. That made them worse. They were laced with something darker than rage doubt. Doubt that Clara now felt creeping into her own bones. "I swear to you," she whispered, "I felt nothing. No breath, no heartbeat. That child was gone." "Then where is she?" Rhett asked. Clara didn't have an answer. They stood there, in silence, only the wind and the shifting horse to break the tension. The shovel gleamed dull in the morning light, like a relic dug up from the past. Rhett turned and looked at her one last time. "I'm not asking for help," he said. "Asking for answers. And if you can't give them, I'll find someone who will." Then he mounted his horse, the shovel still dragging behind like a ghost's tail, and rode off into the trees. Clara stood frozen, the dew soaking her boots, and realized if Rhett wasn't mad. Then something unthinkable had happened, and it had all started with that shovel. The name Emily Calder used to bring warmth to Clara's heart. She remembered the child's giggle, soft and high-pitched, like creek water running over smooth stones. Clara had been there the day Emily was born. She had held her, cut the cord, and wrapped her in soft flannel. And just 2 days ago, she'd wrapped her again, only this time in linen for burial. Now, all Clara could feel when she thought of Emily was dread. Inside the cabin, she paced the creaky floorboards, trying to hold on to logic. The medical signs had been clear, clammy skin, still chest, wide glassy eyes that no longer focused. She had checked twice. She'd even pressed her cheek to the girl's lips. There had been nothing, and yet Rhett's words kept echoing. You buried her alive. Worse still, she wasn't in the grave. Clara poured herself a cup of tea, her hands trembling so badly the mug clattered against the tin pot. Her mind swung between reason and panic. The doctor, Dr. Fallon, had pronounced the girl dead. He was the town's only physician. She hadn't liked how quickly he moved that day, how his hand trembled slightly when he signed the death slip, but she'd said nothing. A father in agony didn't need more fear. She should have spoken up. Clara opened the small drawer by her writing desk, where she kept all birth and death records for the Valley family she helped. She pulled out the page with Emily's name. The ink from the death date had smudged slightly, as if written in haste. But what caught her eye was the doctor's signature. It wasn't quite right. The F in Fallon was usually tight, looped, professional. This one slanted sharply. Rushed. Clara blinked. Could someone else have signed it? Could the girl have been taken? No. No one would do that to a child, would they? She stepped outside and stared at the narrow trail leading toward Bitter Hollow Ranch. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, but the unease in her chest grew heavier. Her feet carried her without permission. She saddled her horse, grabbed her satchel, and rode hard toward the Calder homestead. Bitter Hollow sat on a ridge, overlooking the canyon, the kind of land that passed from one Calder man to the next. When Clara arrived, the air was deathly still. No ranch hands worked the fences. No animals moved in the pens, and Rhett was already waiting like he knew she'd come. He stood on the front porch, arms crossed over his chest. Clara dismounted slowly and walked to the base of the steps. I need to see her room, she said. Rhett nodded once and opened the door. The inside of the house looked like time had stopped. Dishes still sat in the basin. Dust had gathered on the mantel. And at the far end of the hall, Emily's door was cracked open. Clara hesitated before entering. The little bed was neatly made, the quilt tucked tight beneath the pillow. The room smelled faintly of lavender and something else, something earthy. She knelt beside the chest at the foot of the bed, opening it slowly. Inside were Emily's things, her doll, her sketchbook, a blue ribbon, and a folded piece of paper Clara didn't recognize. She opened it. It was a map, hand-drawn, childlike and strange. A circle marked home, a squiggly line marked river, and near the top edge, a strange set of words written in shaky script, quiet place, where he said to wait. Clara turned to Rhett, who stood just inside the door. Did she draw this? She did, he said, last week. Said it was for a game. I thought nothing of it. Clara's gaze dropped to the red ribbon hanging from the bedpost. It was torn, frayed on one end as if yanked from her hair. She didn't have this when we buried her, Clara whispered. I would have noticed. Rhett's jaw clenched. It was there this morning, tied to the shovel rope. Clara's heart pounded in her chest. If this ribbon had been tied there after the burial, Then Emily had been alive long enough to untie it from her own hair, long enough to leave a message. I think, Clara said carefully, someone took her, or meant to. That map. The quiet place. She didn't come up with that on her own. Rhett said nothing, but in his eyes something shifted from anger to hope. Laced with terror, Clara clutched the map in her hands and said softly, "We're not just dealing with a mistake anymore. We may be dealing with a crime." Clara rode into town before noon, the wind tugging at her shawl, the paper map clenched in her gloved hand. The sky was clear, but a strange stillness hovered over Brooks Hollow, a town that usually bustled with ranchers, wagons, and children, skipping stones outside the general store. Today it felt abandoned. Eyes peeked through window slats, shutters were half closed, and doors shut quietly as she passed. Something was wrong. Clara dismounted at the post office and tied her horse loosely. She walked down the wooden boardwalk toward the sheriff's office, her boots echoing against the planks like hammer strikes. The moment she opened the door, the sheriff looked up from behind his desk and froze. Sheriff Milton Rourke was a broad-shouldered man with gray at his temples and a jaw made of stone. Clara had known him since he was a deputy, fair, steady, and usually unflinching. But now he flinched. "Miss Bess," he said, standing a little too quickly. "Didn't expect to see you in town today." "I didn't expect to be," she replied, voice calm but edged. "But there's something I need to talk to you about." She sat, uninvited, across from his desk and placed the child's map on the wood. Milton didn't touch it. "That's Emily Calder's handwriting," she said. "You know it as well as I do." He stared at the paper but made no move to speak. "She drew it before her death," Clara continued. "But it was found after with signs she may still be alive." The sheriff leaned back slowly, folding his arms. "Clara, I know this is hard. Everyone took her death hard. You were close to that family." She raised an eyebrow. "Don't talk to me like I'm grieving. Talk to me like someone who buried a child and is now being told that child's grave is empty." His jaw twitched. "That can't be true." "It is. Rhett dug it up himself. And the doctor? Dr. Fallon?" "Gone. Vanished. Same with the undertaker." Milton's face darkened. "I sent Fallon out west last night. He claimed he had to tend to another family in urgent need." "Didn't say where." Clara stood. "You sent him? After the girl's burial?" Milton didn't answer. "Sheriff," she said, her voice low now, "tell me straight, do you believe Emily Calder was dead when she was put in that grave?" His silence spoke louder than words. Clara left the sheriff's office with the uneasy weight of a truth no one wanted to say aloud. Something had gone wrong, or worse, something had been planned. Either way, Emily's death certificate didn't mean anything anymore. She walked to the general store, hoping someone might have seen or heard something. But as she entered, Nettie Dawson, the shopkeeper's wife, turned her back and began stacking cans with such focus it was clearly an act. "Nettie," Clara said. "I don't want trouble, Clara. You knew Emily." I said, "I don't want trouble." "Then why does this whole town look like it's been holding its breath since her funeral?" Nettie paused, shoulders tense. She spoke without turning around. "Someone came through town 3 weeks ago, a tall man in a dark coat. Called himself Dr. Sims. Said he was a scientist from the East offering cures for consumption, fever, even fits." Clara's mouth went dry. "Was he with Fallon?" Nettie nodded slowly. "Didn't trust him. Fallon did, though. Said he was a genius from Baltimore. They kept talking late at night behind the clinic. One morning Sims left headed toward Kansas, but Fallon, he's been acting strange ever since. Did this man see Emily? Didn't see. But I heard Fallon say she was the perfect subject. Thought they were talking about medicine. Now I'm not so sure." Clara turned and rushed out the door. She knew where she needed to go next. Fallon's clinic. The clinic sat near the edge of town, white paint peeling, windows smudged. Inside, the place was abandoned. Files were scattered, drawers half open. The exam table was stripped bare. But on the back desk sat something that chilled her to the core. A crate addressed to Dr. Abram Sims, Philadelphia, stamped. Medical specimen handled with care and tucked into the corner. A ribbon, red, torn. The second one. Clara stared at it in silence. Emily hadn't been buried. She had been taken. Asterisk Clara arrived back at Bitter Hollow Ranch just before sundown, the wind carrying dust across the open field and a strange smell of pine sap and sweat in the fading light. Her horse was tired, but not half as tired as her soul. In her saddlebag, she carried the red ribbon. In her mind, the image of that shipping crate haunted her medical specimen. Handle with care. Emily hadn't been buried alive. She'd been marked for delivery. She found Rhett in the barn, kneeling in the hay, covered in dirt and sweat. He didn't hear her come in. His shovel lay across the barn floor, and a lantern sat beside him, flickering. He was digging again. "Rhett?" Clara said softly. He didn't answer, just kept scooping hay and soil like a man possessed. Beside him lay a wooden box, a rough build, no lid, no nails, just enough to hold. "Something, or someone?" "Rhett," she repeated, stepping forward. He stopped. Slowly he looked up, and his eyes were darker than she'd ever seen them. "I can still hear her," he said. "Every night since we put her in the ground. At first I thought it was just dreams. Then I started seeing things." "What kind of things?" she asked gently. He looked down at his shaking hands. "A red ribbon tied around my saddle horn one morning. Her boot prints around the well. Then last night, I heard her say, 'Papa, I'm not cold anymore.'" Clara stepped closer, knelt beside him. "I believe you." He blinked, not expecting. "That? You believe me?" "I do," she said. "Because someone took her, and they wanted us to believe she died. But Emily never left this world. Someone tried to erase her from it." She reached into her satchel and handed him the ribbon. "This was found in Fallon's clinic. And he's gone, ran out of town with no warning. Took everything but left this behind. I think he was working with someone. A man named Dr. Abram Sims. Maybe the one who told Fallon how to make it look like she was gone." Rhett stared at the ribbon like it was made of fire. His fingers trembled as he touched the torn end. "This was in her hair the day she died. I remember braiding it myself." Clara nodded. "Then how did it end up in a crate marked for Philadelphia?" His chest rose and fell sharply. "She's still alive," Clara said. "And they didn't take her far. I found a map Emily drew, remember? That little trail marked Quiet Place? I think she knew something was going to happen. I think someone warned her or tricked her." Rhett stood suddenly, fury and urgency flooding his face. "Then why are we still here?" Clara followed him out to the yard as he saddled his horse like a man at war. "Where's the map?" he asked. "In my bag." "But we need to think, Rhett. If we storm through the canyon with guns, we might scare whoever has her. Or worse, we might drive them to do something desperate." He turned, gripping her shoulders with dirt-caked hands. "She's 8, Clara. She's afraid of the dark. She can't fall asleep unless someone's humming. I don't have time to think." Clara met his gaze, heart breaking at the helplessness in his voice. "We'll find her," she said. "But we're not doing it blind. We go at first light, together, and if she left us a trail, we'll follow it." His grip loosened. "I tried so hard to protect her, kept her away from the townsmen. Gave her everything I didn't have growing up." "You did protect her," Clara whispered. "She's alive because you didn't let it go. You heard her when no one else believed she was still speaking." Rhett sat down on the porch steps, exhausted. Clara stood beside him as the sky turned amber and the wind carried the scent of smoke from a far-off chimney, somewhere out. There, a little girl was waiting, maybe in a cave, maybe behind a locked door, maybe listening for her father's voice, hoping it would find her. "I'm not burying another box," Rhett said, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Next time I dig, it'll be to bring her home." Clara nodded dot, and somewhere in the quiet of the evening, they both thought they heard it, the faintest echo carried on the wind. A child's voice, calling. Clara spread the hand-drawn map across Rhett's kitchen table at dawn. The edges curled slightly, and the childlike lines weren't to scale. But Clara's finger traced the route with quiet certainty. "This spot here," she said, pointing to the small X labeled Quiet Place, "matches an old mining trail near Dead Man's Bluff. It hasn't been used in years." "You said she'd wander out that way sometimes?" Rhett nodded, bleary-eyed from another sleepless night. "She called it her thinking place. I told her not to go far, but Emily was always brave, too brave. She wasn't drawing just for fun," Clara said. This was a warning. He looked at her, rough hands cradling a tin mug of coffee he hadn't touched. "Do you think she knew something was going to happen?" "I think someone scared her. Or promised her something. Maybe Fallon, maybe Sims." She reached into her bag and pulled out the second red ribbon still torn, its end stiff with dirt. "This was left in the crate at the clinic, which means she had both of them after she died. She's trying to leave a trail." Rhett's jaw clenched. "And we missed it." "No," Clara said firmly. "We're seeing it now. That's what matters." He stood, grabbing his coat and hat. "Let's ride." They reached the mouth of the trail by mid-morning. The land here was steep and quiet, the trees tall and tightly packed. Dust covered the trail like a shroud, and no tracks marked the path, at least none that would be easy to see. But Clara wasn't looking for footprints. She was looking for ribbons, Dot, and soon she found one, tied to a low-hanging branch, thin, red, fluttering in the breeze like a signal flag. "Here," she called softly. Rhett dismounted and stared at it, his face pale. "She left this for us. Or for anyone who cared to look," Clara added. "It means she was here, maybe even recently." They continued slowly, careful not to miss anything. A few yards later, they found a small pile of rocks arranged in a triangle near the edge of the trail. In the center was a child's wooden toy, a horse, carved roughly but with love. One of the legs was broken. Rhett knelt beside it. "I made this when she was 5. Clara crouched next to him. "She's leading us." They rode on, farther. Up the trail, the trees opened into a narrow ridge. Clara spotted a worn satchel tucked beneath a log. Inside was a girl's sock, a broken locket with a photo of Rhett and Emily, and a scrap of paper torn from her sketchbook. A single word was scrawled across it: cave. Rhett's throat went dry. "There's a cave system beyond the bluff. Folks used it during the war to hide wagons." Clara rose to her feet. She went there, or was taken there. "But why not just run home?" Rhett asked, frustration rising. "If she was free enough to leave this, why not come back?" Clara shook her head. "She's hiding, or waiting for someone to come. She might be afraid of what's watching her." Rhett glanced around at the thick trees. The silence pressed in tighter now, as if something unseen was listening. The wind had died. Even the birds had gone quiet. Clara untied the next ribbon from a branch. "It's not just breadcrumbs," she whispered. "It's a message." By afternoon, they reached a craggy outcrop that overlooked a shallow valley. Rhett dismounted, eyes fixed on a narrow crevice in the rocks. Half covered by brush and dirt, it would be easy to miss unless you were looking for it. "Cave's entrance is there," he said. "That's where she used to go." Clara nodded. "Then that's where we go." They tied the horses and stepped into the dark, the lantern casting long shadows along the walls. The air smelled of damp stone and earth, but beneath that, Clara caught something faint. Lavender. The scent Emily always wore. Rhett stopped abruptly. Clara nearly ran into him until she saw what made him freeze. Pressed against the far wall was a worn blanket, a child's boot, and a cracked porcelain cup. "She's been here," he said. Clara felt her heart catch in her throat. "Maybe still is." But just as she stepped forward, a voice echoed from deep within the cavern, faint, panicked, and unmistakably young. "Papa?" Rhett bolted ahead, shouting her name into the darkness. But as the echo faded, they heard something else, a rustle. Then the clatter of rock. And silence. Clara grabbed his arm. "She's close," she whispered. "But someone else might be too." Rhett's shout, "Emily!" echoed off the cold stone walls and vanished into the deep dark of the cavern. His boots scraped against rock as he pushed farther ahead, calling again, louder this time, a father's desperation surging through his voice, but no answer came, just a low wind whispering through the jagged crevices and the soft drip, drip, drip of water deep underground. Clara raised her lantern and scanned the narrow passage behind them. Her heart pounded hard in her chest. She called out. I heard her. "She's here," Rhett said, his voice raw. "She must be hiding, or being hidden," Clara replied. "Let's not rush. If someone else is in here, we don't know how they'll react." They moved cautiously deeper into the cave. The tunnel narrowed, the ceiling sloping low, enough that Rhett had to duck. The air grew damper. The scent of lavender was gone now, replaced by damp stone and something else, sulfur, maybe, or medicine. The kind that burns when it touches skin. Then Clara saw it. On the wall, scrawled in charcoal or soot. "Papa," in shaky, childlike handwriting. She stopped. "Rhett." He turned and followed her gaze. "She left this." "No," Clara said. "She wrote it here, and look, there's more." Next to the word was a crude drawing. A circle with lines like arms and legs, a stick figure. And beside it another shape, a taller one, looming, watching. The figure's eyes were drawn with heavy pressure, blacker than the rest. "She's trying to warn us," Clara whispered. Suddenly, a thump echoed ahead. Heavy, deliberate. Rhett raised his lantern. "Who's there?" No answer. They pressed on, tension thick in the air. Every few steps revealed more signs, a trail of tiny boot prints in the dust, a discarded ribbon, another piece of Emily's sketchbook torn into a strip and wedged between stones. "She's moving through the tunnels," Clara murmured, "leaving signs as she goes. She's smart," Rhett said softly. "Always was." But then they heard something else, a slow, dragging sound. Metal against stone. Not a shovel this time. Chains. Clara's stomach turned. She pulled Rhett back into a shadowed alcove just in time to see a tall figure pass by the far opening of the tunnel, just a silhouette, outlined by the faint flicker of another lantern. A man, dressed in black, moving with stiff, unnatural precision, and dragging something behind him. The man stopped. Clara held her breath. Then he sniffed the air. "Emily," he called out, voice calm and coaxing. "You're being a very difficult girl. You know, Dr. Sims doesn't like games." Rhett's fists clenched. The man continued walking, his lantern casting twisted shadows as he disappeared down another passage. They waited until the sound of his boots faded. Then Clara whispered, "That's him, Sims." "He has her," Rhett growled. "I'm going after him." "No," Clara snapped, grabbing his sleeve. "Not yet. You don't know where that tunnel leads. We'll lose the advantage." "You want to wait?" he hissed. "She's here, Clara." "She's here," Clara agreed, "and she's still alive. Which means we need to outthink him, not just charge in and give him a reason to panic." Rhett didn't like it, but he nodded. He knew Clara was right. They followed Emily's signs, staying close to the right-hand tunnel wall as she had likely done. The deeper they went, the clearer the path became, and then up ahead they saw it, a narrow chamber, carved out of limestone, blankets, a child's dress, a small tin plate with uneaten food, a sleeping roll barely large enough for a girl. "She's been kept here," Clara said, voice shaking, "like an animal." Rhett picked up the dress, holding it as though it might fall apart in his hands. "She's close," he said. "I can feel it." Then a voice cracked through the stillness. "Not from far away this time, just around the bend." "Please," the voice whimpered. "Don't take me again. I was good. I stayed quiet." Clara's breath caught. It was her. Rhett stepped forward, heart in his throat. "Emily," he whispered. The child sobbed softly from the shadows, but before they could move another inch, another voice echoed from behind them, cold and clipped. "You really should have stayed away." Rhett spun around at the voice, lantern swinging wildly and throwing grotesque shadows against the cave walls. Clara stepped in front of him instinctively, shielding the child's voice with her body. But the figure behind them didn't lunge or raise a weapon. He simply stepped forward, calm, polished, and utterly out of place in the cold. Filthy dark. Dr. Abram Sims. Tall, clean-shaven, with silver-rimmed glasses that gleamed in the lantern light. He wore a long black coat that brushed the cave floor and boots without a speck of mud on them. His calm, calculated presence made the damp air feel colder. "You've come far," Sims said, folding his hands behind his back. "Too far, I'm afraid," Rhett growled. "Where is she?" Sims tilted his head. "Safe for now, but you've put her at risk by coming here. That child is delicate. Her condition is unstable." "What condition?" Clara asked sharply. Sims' eyes flicked toward her. "Oh, Miss Bess, you were always sharp. Shame you were wasted on these backwoods. If only you'd seen what I see. Emily is unique. Her nervous system, her brain shows signs of rare resilience. I only needed a few more days to complete my research." "She's a little girl," Clara snapped, stepping forward. "Not a science project." Sims sighed as if inconvenienced. "Your sentimentality is exactly why you're standing in the dirt with a gun pointed at your back." Click. Clara froze. From the shadows behind them, another man emerged, Jeremiah Fallon, the town doctor. His face was pale, sweat streaking down his brow. He held the pistol awkwardly, his hand shaking, but the barrel was aimed squarely at Rhett's spine. "Fallon?" Clara said, stunned. "You helped him?" "I didn't mean to," Fallon stammered. "He paid me. Said it was just observation. Said she wouldn't feel anything. I didn't know he'd take her." Sims gave a thin smile. "People always say that. I didn't know. I didn't mean to." "Pathetic." Rhett turned slowly, his voice low and lethal. "Fallon, I trusted you with my child." I pronounced her dead," Fallon said. "But the drug she gave her, it only slowed her heart. I thought it had stopped. I swear I didn't know she'd still be breathing when you buried her." Clara stepped between them. "Stop. This isn't helping her." She turned back to Sims. "You wanted to steal her. You faked her death. You had Fallon drug her and arranged for her to be shipped east. Why?" Sims didn't flinch. "Because brilliance demands sacrifice. Children like her children with resilience to fever, trauma, even asphyxiation are rare. She might hold answers to questions the medical world hasn't even begun to ask." "You buried her alive," Rhett snarled. "No," Sims corrected. "You did, but let's not argue over semantics. The real mistake was her waking up early." Clara's blood went cold. "She woke up?" Sims nodded. "While being transported. She screamed, bit one of my men, and escaped into the woods. I've been trying to recapture her ever since. She keeps moving, always just ahead of us. Clever girl. I will give her that. You'll never touch her again, Rhett growled, drawing his revolver. Don't be foolish, Sims warned. Shoot me and you'll never find her in time. The caves are endless. You think she's close now, but she's not. Not anymore. I moved her. Clara narrowed her eyes. Then why are you still here? Sims blinked only for a second, and that was all she needed to know. You're lying, she said. She's here, somewhere in this cave. And if you moved her, you wouldn't be standing here monologuing. You'd be halfway back to Philadelphia. Sims' lip curled. You think you can outplay me? No, she said calmly. I think you've underestimated how far a parent will go. Without a word, Rhett pivoted and decked Fallon with one punch. The gun clattered to the floor. Sims stepped back, reaching for something under his coat butt. Clara was faster. She grabbed a chunk of broken lantern glass from the cave floor and raised it. Try it, she said coldly. Sims hesitated. And then, from the shadows behind them, came a soft, trembling voice. Papa? Clara turned slowly. Emily stood at the edge of the shadows, barefoot, pale, trembling but alive. Behind her, a jagged wall of stone partially blocked a narrow crawl space, her hiding place. The cave had protected her when nothing else did. Rhett dropped to his knees. Emily. She ran into his arms, crying into his chest. Sims lunged, but Clara was ready. The lantern glass slashed his cheek as she stepped in front of the child. You buried the wrong people, she hissed. Now you're the one who's trapped. Rhett clutched Emily to his chest as if she might vanish if he let go. Her tiny arms wrapped tightly around his neck, her body trembling but alive. Clara stood beside them, breath heavy, glass shard still gripped in her hand, its edge dark with Sims' blood. Sims staggered backward, his hand to his cheek, the cut shallow but humiliating. His eyes burned with fury, but Clara saw something else in them too. Fear. The hunter had become cornered. Behind him, Dr. Fallon lay groaning on the floor, still conscious but dazed from Rhett's punch. A pistol lay just inches from his outstretched fingers. Don't, Clara warned, stepping toward it and kicking it away. Sims lifted his hands slowly. Let's be rational. We're all emotional, but no one needs to die here. You made that choice, Rhett growled, rising to his feet with Emily in his arms. When you stuck a needle in my little girl and buried her alive. I saved her from a life of insignificance, Sims said coolly. Do you know how many children die every day in this wasteland? She would have been forgotten. But under my care, she would have been studied, remembered, even praised. Clara stepped between him and the others. You drugged a child, convinced a doctor to sign her death slip, staged a funeral, and tried to ship her across the country in a box. You're not a man of medicine. You're a trafficker in lab coats. Sims looked around the chamber, weighing his options. There's no one coming to save you, Clara said. No assistants, no wagons. It's just you, us, and a whole lot of angry mountain between here and your exit. Rhett shifted Emily into one arm and raised his revolver. You're walking out of here in chains. Or not at all. A flicker of defiance crossed Sims' face. You'll never prove any of this. Fallon will claim ignorance. There are no witnesses. You're forgetting one thing, Clara said, tilting her head. She remembers. Emily looked up, her small voice cracking through the silence. You told me to be quiet or you'd put me back in the dark. Sims froze. And you said Papa wouldn't come, she continued, tears slipping down her cheeks. But he did. He always comes. That broke something in Rhett. His eyes welled, and his grip on the revolver tightened. Sims raised his hands higher. I surrender. Clara nodded slowly. Good, because if you hadn't, she glanced at Rhett, he wasn't going to wait for the law. They bound Sims' hands with leather reins and tied Fallon's wrists behind his back. Fallon didn't resist. He looked broken, sunken into himself, mumbling half-coherent apologies to no one in particular. Clara kept her hand on Emily's shoulder as they retraced their path back out of the mine. Every few yards, the girl paused to pick up a ribbon she'd left behind. "I dropped them so Papa could find me," she said, her voice still small. "You were brave," Clara whispered. "You saved yourself." "No," Emily said. "Mama did." Clara paused, unsure how to respond. Emily looked up. "I heard her voice when I was scared. When he locked me in the dark, Mama told me to leave signs. She said Papa would see." Rhett blinked hard but said nothing. Outside, the sun was setting gold, pouring across the hills, spilling into the mouth of the mine like salvation. The air was fresh and free again. Emily squinted into the light and pressed her face against her father's chest. "I want to go home." "You are home," he whispered. Clara turned to Sims and Fallon. "The sheriff's going to want your names carved in iron. Don't think you'll vanish quietly." Fallon just nodded numbly. "But Sims—" He smiled. "A man like me," he said, "never stays locked away for long." Rhett stepped close, gun still in hand. "You'll stay buried. And this time, we'll make sure you don't come up breathing." Clara reached out and pulled Rhett back. "Let the law handle it." He holstered the revolver but gave Sims one last glare. "I buried my daughter once. This time, I'm burying you with a trial." As they rode back toward Bitter Hollow, Emily leaned into Clara on the saddle, sleepy but safe. Rhett rode beside them, eyes never leaving the horizon. Clara glanced down at the last red ribbon in the girl's hand, a symbol of survival. A child who had escaped death, not by luck, but by love, wit, and the unshakable bond between a father and daughter. The town of Brooks Hollow didn't know how to react when Clara, Rhett, and little Emily rode into view with Dr. Fallon slumped in saddle straps and Dr. Sims tied like a steer behind Rhett's horse. Shop doors cracked open. Church bells stopped mid-ring. And one by one, folks stepped into the dusty street as if waking from a long, collective lie. Clara dismounted first. Her face was hard, tired, but alive with purpose. She looked to the sheriff's office where Sheriff Milton Rourke stood outside, arms folded, mouth set in a grim line. He stepped forward as the small procession halted in front of him. "We brought you the truth," Clara said simply. Milton's eyes locked on Fallon, then Sims. His jaw tightened. "Is she—" He looked to Emily. "I'm here," Emily whispered. From her father's arms. Her voice was tired, but steady. The sheriff exhaled slowly and tipped his hat toward her. "Welcome home, sweetheart." Rhett passed Fallon over to the deputies. "He lied to me. Signed her death like it was a receipt. And he'll stand trial for it," Milton said, leading them into the jailhouse. "Every word, every signature. He'll answer." Sims remained silent as they forced him inside, still dignified in appearance, but no longer in power. He'd lost his audience, and he knew it. Clara turned to Milton. This wasn't just two men. This town let it happen. "You're not wrong," the sheriff admitted. "We looked away. We trusted the white coats and the big words. No one asked why a coffin was nailed shut so quick. No one checked the child's pulse twice." He glanced at the gathered crowd, faces a mix of shame, awe, and fear. "But I will," he added. "From here on out, we question everything," Clara nodded. It was something. That night, Rhett didn't return to Bitter Hollow. He and Emily stayed at Clara's cabin, tucked up on the hill like a sanctuary. She gave them her bed and slept in a chair by the fire, half dozing with a shotgun across her knees. Emily woke in the middle of the night, crying. Clara sat up instantly, heart pounding. But Rhett was already beside his daughter, pulling her into his arms. "It's okay," he whispered. "It's over." Emily clung to him, trembling. I thought I was going to stay in that box forever." Clara stood quietly in the doorway, listening, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You didn't," Rhett said softly. "You found your way back. You came home." "I heard Mama singing," Emily said, voice barely a breath. "When I was scared, in the dark, she told me to wait." Rhett didn't speak for a long time. Then he kissed her forehead. "She was right. You waited, and I came." Outside, the wind moved through the trees, rustling the red ribbons Clara had tied their earlier tokens of what had been lost. And found Dot in the morning. The town gathered near the church. Fallon had confessed everything. The drug he'd used, the payment he took, the moment he realized the girl still breathed, but signed the paper anyway. Sims refused to speak. But they found enough in his satchels, notes, and diagrams to convict him 10 times over. No trial date was set yet, but Sheriff Rourke made one thing clear to the townsfolk gathered near the steps. The only thing buried from now on is the silence. Clara stood beside Rhett and Emily on the edge of the crowd. She didn't need recognition. She just wanted to see it through. Rhett leaned close. "You saved her." Clara shook her head. "She saved herself. I just followed the signs." "But you believe she was still out there," he said. "Even when I didn't." Clara didn't answer. She just watched Emily chase a butterfly near the churchyard, red ribbon fluttering in her hair like a flame that wouldn't go out. That night, Clara returned to the little graveyard where the child's empty coffin had been lowered into the Fae. Earth. She knelt beside the headstone and touched the fresh engraving. Emily called her. Buried once, lost never. She added one last ribbon to the wooden cross, a final piece of the trail. Not to mark where the girl had gone, but to remind the world that she'd come back. Red arrived behind her a few minutes later, his coat dusted from the ride. "Why come back?" he asked. Clara stood. "Because this was supposed to be the end of her story, but it's not." They walked down the hill together, the stars overhead wide and silent. And for the first time in days, there were no chains, no lies, no shadows in the dark, just a girl who survived the unthinkable, and the people who refused to bury her twice. The summer sun broke clean over the hills, as if to declare that no shadows would remain today. Clara stood at the edge of Bitter Hollow Ranch, watching Emily and Rhett plant a new row of lavender near the porch, Emily's favorite. Her laughter drifted on the breeze, soft and light, like a sound from a world that hadn't almost buried her alive. It had been 4 weeks since they brought Sims and Fallon into town, since the last red ribbon had been tied, since a grave was dug for a girl who never belonged in one. Emily wore a pale yellow dress now, new boots, hair freshly brushed, but the ribbons still dangled from her braids, reminders of where she'd been and how she'd found her way back. Clara smiled faintly and looked toward the barn. The shovel that had once been tied to that riderless horse now leaned quietly against the wall, untouched. They hadn't burned it. They hadn't buried it. They left it there, a symbol of the weight they almost carried to the end. Later that morning, the sheriff rode up with papers in hand. Rhett met him at the gate. "It's done," Sheriff Rourke said. "Sims has been handed over to federal marshals. Fallon's being moved to the state prison. He pled guilty, says he sees Emily's face in his sleep." "Good," Rhett replied, flatly. "Let him see her face every night for the rest of his life." Rourke looked over at Emily, who was picking wildflowers. "She's stronger than most grown men I've ever met," the sheriff said. "Stronger than we gave her credit for. She's her mother's child," Rhett said. Clara turned at that. It was the first time he'd said it out loud since they found Emily. "I think she'd be proud," Clara offered gently. "She is," Rhett said, his eyes never leaving his daughter. "I feel her in the wind, in the way Emily breathes when she sleeps. She was the one who told her to wait." "And you listened," Clara said. He nodded. "You helped me hear it." That night, They held a supper on the porch. Just Clara, Rhett, Emily, and a sky full of stars. They said grace, not just over the food, but over everything, the answered prayers, the ones whispered into the dirt, the ones carved in ribbon and soot. Emily crawled into Clara's lap after pie, leaning her head against her chest. Are you gonna stay? She asked. Clara smiled. For a while, yes. You could live here, the girl said sleepily. Like a real family. Clara's eyes met Rhett's. I'll be close, she promised. As long as you want me. Emily smiled, already drifting off. You always find people, the girl murmured, even when they don't know they're lost. In the days that followed, life returned to Bitter Hollow. Chickens clucked. Horses nickered. Emily ran again, but some things didn't go back to how they were, and maybe they weren't meant to. Clara began rebuilding her practice, not just as a midwife, but as a woman the town now listened to. She spoke at the church, the schoolhouse, even the sheriff's office, reminding them how easy it is to bury the truth beneath uniforms, titles, and polite silence. She ended every talk the same way. If you see something wrong, ask. If someone's too quiet, listen harder. And if a child disappears, don't just mourn, search. One late afternoon, Clara stood alone at Emily's old grave. Grass had grown over the disturbed earth, but the headstone still stood not as a lie, but a monument. She placed a new ribbon there. Fresh, red, clean, not a sign of danger this time, but a declaration. She lived. Behind her, Red approached quietly, holding a small box. Made something, he said. Inside was a wooden carving, a girl with ribbons in her hair, arms outstretched, standing tall. Clara touched it with reverence. She'd never be forgotten. Rhett looked at her. Neither will you. As the sun lowered behind the ridge, casting long gold shadows across the field, Emily ran up the hill laughing, arms full of lavender. Mama said today would be beautiful, she said breathlessly. Clara knelt and gathered her in an embrace. And she was right, she whispered. Because you're still here to see it,